eat this, I feel like a kid at Disneyland, even though I've never been to Disneyland, but I think this is how I would feel if I were to go to Disneyland, because I would be super, super happy. And I am super, super happy right now. It's so, so tasty. Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun week here at My Yummy Spatula. I hope everybody's had a lovely, wonderful week and you're ready to get your baking on. So for today's episode, yes, we're making a banoffee tart, and yes, it is going to be absolutely delicious. I mean, bananas, cream and caramel all within a buttery, flaky crust. How can you really go wrong? So this is going to be a winner and you're going to enjoy it so much. So let's get started. Now before we get started, you know the drill. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you do enjoy this video, by the end of it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does mean a lot to me. And leave a comment, let me know what you think of the recipe. If you like banoffee tart, if you've tried it before, what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments as well. Okay, let's actually get started with today's recipe. So we're going to split this into 2 days. You'll still watch one full video, but in terms of shooting, I'm going to split this over 2 days because that's the realistic way you should be doing this tart. So I'm going to show you exactly the way I would be doing it in real life and not camera version. So for day one, we're basically going to prep most of our components. So we're going to get our tart dough making today. We're also going to make our dulce de leche, and lastly, we'll also get our whipped ganache paste ready for our cream tomorrow. So we're going to do the components ready, and then tomorrow we're going to bake our tarts and actually assemble the whole thing. So that's how this sort of mise en place is going to go for this particular video. Now, because dulce de leche is going to take the longest to happen, and yes, we're doing the cheat version where we're just gonna boil, I guess you boil it, cook a can of condensed milk for a good 2 to 2.5 hours to get a really nice, thick, luscious dulce de leche. You can make your own, of course, that's an option. It's really time consuming where you actually actively have to do something, and I mean, I don't know, it's up to you. I've tried making my own dulce de leche from scratch and it is good, but is it worth it? I don't think so. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the lazy girl version because this stuff gives you pretty good results and it is damn delicious. So I'm gonna go for that one. So for dulce de leche, really simple. I've got a pot of water boiling on the stove, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna pop this can of condensed milk in our water. That's it. But we just gotta make sure that the can is completely submerged with water. Otherwise, there is a chance that this might pop with pressure and you're gonna be left with dulce de leche sealing. Have fun cleaning that one. Don't want that. So let's make sure that it is covered with water at all times. And then yeah, we're gonna let it do its thing for 2.5 hours. Just gotta make sure the water is topped up every now and then, and it's basically very hands-off and very, very easy. But I don't like my can to touch the bottom of the pot directly, so I'm just gonna pop a ring inside my pot, and I'm gonna place this on top like that, just so it's not touching directly with the bottom. And this also helps to sort of keep the can grounded and not just sort of float everywhere, if that makes sense. Cool, I'm gonna show you, and that is it for our dulce de leche. Super easy. Let's pop this in with a pair of tongs so we don't burn ourselves. And then take your can and put that on top of your ring. I'll have to top this up with more water, and that's ready to go. I've just topped it up with water. As you can see, my can is submerged. So I'm gonna leave this, I'm gonna keep checking as the water level reduces, make sure to top it up with more water, and that's it. Okay, so while that's happening, let's get started with our tart dough. So because this recipe is predominantly eggless, I thought we'll just keep it completely eggless so that everybody can join in on the fun and make our eggless tart dough as well. So super easy, again, very similar to any other tart dough. We're gonna do the rub-in method wherein we rub really, really cold butter into our flour. This is a very fail-proof method of making tart doughs, and it really sort of stops or reduces the chances of you overmixing your tart dough and starting to develop that gluten, which is not what we want. When we make tart dough, we want something really flaky and really crumbly, not chewy or tense or with too much bite as you would with bread. Instead, we want a shorter bite, which is why we want minimal gluten development. If you're completely confused as to what that means, let me actually show you. So I've just got my butter out of the freezer here, and it is completely frozen, which is really, really good, especially that I'm working in a slightly hotter environment. It's a good idea to cube and freeze your butter so that it stays cold for a longer period of time. So I've got my plain flour here that I'm going to pop into my mixer here. I'm also going to add my almond meal. Now, because this is eggless, we don't have any egg yolk in there to add that fattiness. Almond meal is a good way to still get that fattiness to your pastry, that really delicateness to your pastry, obviously while not adding any egg. So that's why the almond meal is good, and it adds a really nice flavor. So that's good. Caster sugar also in here, and just a pinch of salt. And then we're going to chuck in our frozen butter. So everything in except our cold water, which is when we're going to add at the end when our dough is almost ready. So I'm just going to use a paddle attachment and get that going. You can use your hands to do this as well. Just make sure you keep rubbing your butter into your flour. You can use a pastry cutter, 2 bowls, anything. You just basically want breadcrumb consistency. So I'm going to get this going at a low speed. So speed 1. And let that going, let that butter combine nicely with the flour, and then we're going to add in our water. Okay, so let's stop this and let's have a look. So this looks very close to being done, but if I lift it up, you can see there's still these big chunks of butter in here that are still there. Very few, but still there. So this is very, very close to being ready, but not quite there yet. This is the time when you don't want to be walking away. Make sure you're just standing on top of your mixer like a hawk and pay attention, because this will go very fast. Okay, just a minute later, you can see most of my butter is now combined. Actually, all of it is combined, and my dough is even starting to clump. So the big chunks that you see in there, it's not actually butter chunks anymore. These are the dough getting stuck together as the butter is getting soft. So this is a good time to start adding in your cold water. So we're using ice cold water, and I'm just gonna do it at a tablespoon at a time. So I'm gonna add 1, let that mix a little bit, add 2. So that's good. I'm actually just gonna stop this and work it on my bench instead. So let's get our dough on our bench. It looks very ruggedy right now, and that's exactly how you want it. Like I said, you want minimal gluten development, so you want to work it as little as possible. It does continue to get worked while you roll it out and line it, so that's why you want to work it very little at each and every stage of your tart making process. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to try to just bring it together as one dough. That's all I want. You see, that's pretty much it. I still have got these rough edges and all of that, which is completely fine. It will all come together once we start to roll out your dough. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm just going to cover this with cling wrap, and this is ready to go. Perfect. And I'm just trying to sort of smooth out the edges and get this into a rectangle, squarish shape so that it's easy for us when we roll it out later. So I'm going to put mine overnight, and we're going to roll it out and line it and bake it tomorrow. And I'll show you what that looks like. So in the fridge it goes. Our tart dough is resting in the fridge, and our dulce de leche is in the making. So the last and final component that we're going to make for our banoffee tart on day 1 is the base for our vanilla whipped ganache. So let's get started. It is a very, very loose ganache because there's barely any chocolate. Like the cream to chocolate ratio is 1 part chocolate, 5 times of cream. So it's very, very little chocolate. It's just enough to give that little bit of stability that white chocolate does, and just enough sort of richness, but not enough that it sort of overpowers it and becomes heavy and dense as your regular ganache would be. So it's a very loose ganache. It's more so to add stability than to actually be a ganache, if that makes sense. Anyway, the process is really simple, and it's like making any other ganache. You heat up your cream, add it to your chocolate, and emulsify. The only addition to this particular one is just adding a little bit of gelatin in there, again, to make it a little bit more stable. So first things first, we're going to do is we're going to bloom our gelatin. And blooming the gelatin is a way to sort of activate it. Because this is in a dry form, you can't just add it to your stuff. It's not going to work. It needs to be bloomed or sort of activated for it to actually do its thing. So the way you bloom your gelatin is you just sort of sprinkle your gelatin powder over your water. And because this is such a small amount, make sure you get all of it. And I'm not going to stir it, I'm just going to leave this on the side for 5 to 10 minutes until it forms a gelatin mass, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so let's put this aside, and while my gelatin is blooming, we're gonna heat up our cream. So I've got my heavy cream or pure cream or thickened cream, whatever you get in your country. It's basically double cream or heavy cream. So I've got my cream in a pot here, and to this I'm just gonna add some vanilla extract. You can also use fresh vanilla if you would like, if you want to be fancy like that. So roughly 1 teaspoon is good. And I've also got my white chocolate in a jug here that we're going to pour our hot cream and then emulsify. Very important to emulsify your ganaches. So that's exactly what I do. I've got my white chocolate in a jug here, and I'm going to put this on heat to get this nice and hot. So I've got my cream here, it's nice and hot. It hasn't come to a boil. I don't want to boil it, but it's just before it sort of comes to a boil, that's when you want to take it off. So it's nice and hot. I'm going to pour it over my chocolate. And to this, we're also going to add our gelatin mass. So if you see, if I turn my bowl, you see it doesn't move. It's sort of this solid jellified state. So that's what a gelatin mass basically looks like. So I'm going to pop that in here as well. And then we're going to blitz it using an immersion blender. Beautiful. So that's all we are looking for. So now that that's done, I'm just going to transfer this in a container. That's done. I'm going to put a layer of cling wrap on the surface of it, and then we're going to let it chill in the fridge overnight. You have to let it rest for at least 8 hours before you can whip this. It's not going to work otherwise. So 8 hours is the minimum you need to rest it. Perfect. That's done. In the fridge it goes, and we're going to whip it up tomorrow. Okay, so it's been 2.5 hours. I'm just going to quickly turn off my stove, and I'm going to let this cool down in the hot water. So let's move this off the stove, and I'm going to let this cool down in the water for roughly half an hour, just so the condensed milk doesn't get a thermal shock. So we're going to leave this, let it cool down, and then I'm going to refrigerate it overnight, and then that's ready to go. Beautiful. So all our components are done, and we are officially done for day 1. I'm going to see you in day 2 magically in 2 seconds. It's day 2, and we're ready to line, bake, and assemble our tart. So first up, what we're going to do is we're going to start rolling out our tart dough that has been resting overnight in the fridge, so it's really nice and hard, good to go. So I'm going to roll this out first, line our tarts, and I'm using perforated tarts today. You can use regular fluted tarts as well, just want to be fancy. So I'm using these perforated tarts to line my tarts, and then we're going to bake them and get ready to assemble our banoffee tarts. Beautiful. So I've got some extra flour here that I'm going to dust my bench with lightly, and we're going to do the same on top, and then just get that rolling. If you want to learn how to line fluted tarts, you can check out my Irish apple tart video. I show you how to line a fluted tart, and that one if you are using fluted tart rings. So make sure you keep moving your tart dough and keep flouring it so that it doesn't stick to your bench. You want to roll this out to roughly 3 to 4 millimeter in thickness for your tart dough. And anytime your dough gets soft, like mine is starting to get a bit soft, just put it in the fridge to rest. Do not try rolling it out when it gets too soft. It's just going to be a big mess. I'm going to actually chill mine real quickly. It's really hot in here today. So I'm going to chill mine really quickly and then continue rolling this out. So I've got a tray here with baking paper on top. So I'm just going to quickly transfer my dough and let it chill. You can stick it in the freezer for 10 minutes to speed up the process. So I'm going to pop this in the freezer for 10 minutes and then we're going to continue rolling it out to 3mm. Perfect. So I've just rolled this out to 3mm thickness and I put it back in the freezer for 10 minutes because it does get quite soft very easily because it does not have any eggs. It doesn't have the same flexibility of a tart dough as an egg-based tart dough would have. So it does get a little bit soft, a little bit faster. So it's a bit more chilling time involved, but it's a small price to pay for a beautiful tart that you're going to be getting at the end of it. Anyway, so we've got this. It's quite nice and cold and chilled now, so we're ready to line our tarts. Let's get this tray of tarts here. So I'm going to line 2 round tarts with a 10cm tart rings, and we'll see if we have enough to line these oval ones, but that's optional. So what I'm going to do is, first things first, I'm going to cut a base for my tart. So just grab your tart ring and just press. Same with this one. And then I'm going to cut strips for the side. This is 2 cm in height, but if you cut strips that are slightly higher, that is best. So I'm just going to cut this jaggedy bit off first, and you can save all of that off cuts, and then we're going to I'm going to do a bit of a rough one. As long as it's higher than 2 cm, it's good. Let's see, we'll do one of the oval ones. Cut that as well. So my dough has already gotten a little bit soft again, so I'm going to put this back in the freezer for 10 minutes and then we're ready to line it. What I'm going to do first is lift up that bit and put it inside. And then we're going to lift one of these strips and working it quickly, put it into our tart. The junction, you just sort of press it with your fingers. Beautiful. Make sure it's nicely stuck, there are no air pockets. I just like to run my finger to make sure it's all nice and straight, and that's it. Beautiful. So all our tarts are lined. I'm going to stick them in the freezer for roughly 10-15 minutes, cut off that excess, and then we're going to freeze our tarts for another 30 minutes. It's very important to freeze your tarts before you put them in the oven because it reduces the amount of shrinkage and your tarts just sort of flopping and falling over. So very, very important to freeze your tarts before you put them in the oven. So 10 minutes first, going to cut off that excess, and then we're going to freeze them for half an hour, and then we're ready to bake them. Okay, so our tarts have been in the fridge for roughly 10 minutes at this point. I'm going to start cutting off the excess. So what you want to do is you want to take a small paring knife like so, and you want to just hold your tart and hold your knife at a slight bit of angle. It's not completely straight, it's a little bit tilted, and then we're just going to cut it up until the size of the ring. So keep rotating, keep your knife at a slight angle, and cut off that excess. There you go. And you can save this and just run your hand around so that you smoothen that edge again. And that's it. I'm going to do the same with all of this. So these are all done. I'm going to stick them in the freezer again for 30 minutes and then we're ready to bake them. Okay, so while our tarts are chilling in the freezer, let's go ahead and whip our vanilla whipped ganache that we made yesterday. So here's the base that we made yesterday. It's nice and cooled down, obviously. And we're ready to whip this. So I'm going to use a stand mixer. You can also do this with a handheld blader. That's completely fine. So I'm just going to chuck in all of this. Look at how smooth and beautiful that looks. Because there's a little bit of gelatin in there, it does like sort of get a little set, like a jiggly set, which is good. Make sure to scrape all of that bean at the bottom. We don't want to lose any of that vanilla, precious vanilla beans. And then we're ready to whip it. So I'm using a whisk attachment, and then we're gonna whip this at a medium speed, not too fast, otherwise it's not going to be as stable. So medium speed until it gets like medium to stiff peaks, and I'll show you what that looks like. Let's have a look. So if you lift it up, as you can see, it's got that little peak. It's not drooping. It's not a super stiff peak, but it still holds its shape a little bit. So this is very close to being done. If you would like, you can just use your whisk and just give this a whisk by hand, or you can just stand here and let this get finished on your mixer, but be very, very careful. This will go super fast. You just want it to be a little bit stiffer. You see how it just drops? You just don't want that to drop. So another 30 seconds to a minute and that should be good. So this was quite literally 20 seconds later and it's already holding its shape. It's taking a lot longer for it to drop. So that's perfect. This is exactly what you want. So I'm going to transfer this to a piping bag and then we're ready to assemble when our tarts are done. Perfect. So I've just got my piping bag ready here with the Saint Honore piping tip. You can use whatever piping tip you would like. And I'm just going to put this in the fridge while we're waiting to assemble our tarts. Beautiful. So it's been roughly half an hour. You can see they're completely frozen, so that's good. I've got my oven preheating at 170 degrees Celsius, fan forced. You can do 180 if you're using a deck oven or a conventional oven with no fan. So that has been preheating. I'm going to put this in. Because I'm using a perforated tart ring, I don't need to put any weights to sort of weigh my tart down. That's the beauty of them. It's because of these holes, they just automatically don't puff out. But if you're using a fluted tart ring, you want to put weights on it because we're going to blind bake it completely. So mine is good to go. I'm going to put this in the oven for roughly 10 to 15 minutes to begin with, and then we can add more depending on how they're looking. You want them to be nicely golden brown on all sides. So I'm going to start with 10 to 15 and then we're going to see how it looks. Okay, so these have been in the oven for roughly 15 to 17 minutes at this point, and you can see they're nicely golden brown on the bottom and the edges are starting to color as well. So if you are using perforated tart rings at this point, you want to lift the rings out. Perfect. So all of the rings are out. I'm going to quickly egg wash this. With just plain egg. We're going to egg wash the tart both on the inside and the outside. This egg gives the tart a nice shine, and it also helps to keep it from getting soggy when you do put in your fillings and all of that. So just brush it on the inside as well as the outside. Obviously, if you're doing an eggless version, you can skip this step, or you can use melted cocoa butter instead. If you have that, that will help to give it a nice shine and sort of protect it from getting soggy as well. Perfect. Tart shells are out of the oven and they're looking beautiful. I'm going to let them cool down completely before we start assembling. So all our components are ready and we are ready to assemble our tarts. So this is a can of dulce de leche that we made yesterday. I just left it in the fridge overnight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly transfer this to a piping bag and look at how beautiful that looks. If you want a slightly darker color, you can just cook it for a little bit longer. I kind of like this. It's really sort of in between that light and dark caramel. So it's got a very toffee flavor, which is what I personally like. So I'm very happy with this consistency. Oh, beautiful. So I'm just going to transfer this to a piping bag so that it's easier for us to fill our tarts. Oh, that is delicious. Okay, so this is good. So that's done. I've also got a little bit of salt to sprinkle on top of our dulce de leche while we're assembling to give up a little bit of a saltiness to it, because salt and caramel, match made in heaven. I've also got my bananas here that I'm going to slice into rounds or rondelles if you would like to be fancy like that. So I'm going to slice them. Now this is optional and I personally think you should 100% do it, but what I like to do is I like to cut my bananas, sprinkle a little bit of sugar on top, and then use a blowtorch to just lightly torch them, to sort of brulee our bananas, and it just adds a very like an extra layer of flavor, which is delicious and beautiful and goes beautifully. If you want, you don't have to do this, but I would recommend doing this because it adds a beautiful, beautiful touch to the entire tart. And I've just got my chopping board here. I'm just gonna grab a wet chucks or wet napkin or something and just put it underneath my chopping board so that it doesn't sort of slide around. Very good safety measure. And we're gonna start with one banana. We don't have like really huge tarts, so I guess one should be good. So we're just gonna cut that top off, and then we're gonna cut this into rondelles, which is basically rounds, but we wanna cut it at a slight angle. So instead of cutting it like that, we're gonna just turn it a little bit at a slight angle, and then we're gonna cut it. You don't want really big chunks of it, so roughly I would say 4mm to 5mm thickness is good. And then what you can do is you can put your bananas on a tray. It's good to use a tray that doesn't sort of warp or burn when you apply heat to it. So I'm just going to use a tray. I'm going to put a little bit of sugar, just sprinkle it on top as you would with like a creme brulee or something like that. And get a blowtorch. So you want to torch them until they're slightly sort of golden brown caramelized on top like that. That's good. Be careful of not to touching your tray when it's still hot, and let's get our tart here. Okay, so I'm going to assemble an oval one just because why not, just a little fancy. So we've got a tart here and we're going to put a layer of dulce de leche at the bottom. Look at how shiny that is. We're going to cover the bottom nicely. That's good. Gonna do a little pinch of salt, not too much, just a teeny tiny bit, and then we're gonna assemble our bananas. So make sure we cover this completely. So I've got 2 layers of bananas on here. And then lastly, we've got our cream. So I'm just using my Saint Andre piping tip. I'm gonna have that V side up, and then we're just gonna do a few of these swirls. Look at that, beautiful. And now I'm just gonna fill some dulce de leche on these spaces. I reckon that's good. And then just a little dusting of cocoa powder. You don't have to, I think this looks good. Or you can shave some chocolate as well. And then lastly, I'll probably put 1 caramelized banana in the center. 1 in the center here. That looks good. Perfect, that looks cute. Wow, the lights like really badly changed. I'm a blower now. Anyway, there you go. Those are your banoffee tarts ready to go. Let's actually dig into it because that's the best part, right? So I'm going to dig into this one. To a slice in the middle. And ooh, look at that. That looks delicious. I'm actually going to have a little bit because I do want to have some dinner first. Wow, that is sensational. Oh my god, I have to have more. Thought I could resist, but like clearly not. You know what? I'm just gonna have it. Okay. Man, that is dangerously good. That is, oh, so good. It's so comforting to eat because it's like caramel and bananas and cream. It's like, after you eat this, I feel like a kid at Disneyland, even though I've never been to Disneyland, but I think this is how I would feel if I were to go to Disneyland, because I would be super, super happy. And I am super, super happy right now. It's so, so tasty. It's very like a naughty kid's treat almost. Oh, love it. Super, super good. Honestly, I think you need to like stop watching this now and quickly go make this, because this is gonna be, it's not gonna be life-changing, but it's gonna be bloody damn delicious. So I think you need to go do this right now. I'm gonna leave you. This is how you make it. You can find the full recipe on my website at www.myyummiespatchla.com. I will leave a link in my description box so you know where to check. And as always, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Don't be a ghost watcher. Hit the subscribe button so that you do get notified every single week when I do post these delicious videos, and you don't miss out on yummy treats like this one. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments, have you tried banoffee tart before, or tart? If you like banoffee tart, if you're a big fan of it. I know this is not the traditional one because the traditional one's made with graham cracker crust. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm a pastry chef, so I like to use actual recipe tarts and stuff like that. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. And that is it. I will see you guys next week. I hope you have a lovely week and happy making. Bye.